Hi, I'm Ray, this is Dalton, and we're here to talk to you about our technology, Xogo. There's a huge problem with consumer tech today, and that's that it's not always accessible for people with disabilities, and that includes cable boxes. The easiest way to explain how this looks is by talking about Kevin. Kevin is one of our users. He's 21 years old, and 3 years ago, he broke his neck playing hockey. So he's paralyzed from the neck down, he's unable to walk, and he can move his arms, but not his fingers. So this leaves him with very limited dexterity, so he's not able to use small devices like remote controls and other equipment to connect to things like cable boxes.
And this is a huge issue. I grew up close to someone with a physical disability, so I've seen a lot of these issues firsthand. And it's really frustrating because technology, on the one hand, has so much potential to really improve the lives of people with disabilities. But on the other, the accessible devices that work for them are very often incompatible with the devices they want to control. So while studying robotics, I realized I could actually do something about it. And this is really what drives us as a company, creating technology that overcomes barriers to access and inclusion for people with disabilities.
Yeah, and it's a passion of ours, but it makes great business sense for you as well. There's 63 million people in the US with a disability that can affect grasping, and each one of those customers is a potential source of lost revenue if they can't use your boxes. But more than that, just the addition to the bottom line is the fact that this is an immeasurable increase in goodwill for your company when you're connecting people to devices that they want to use. There's a reason why Apple and Microsoft and Google are all so focused in this field. It's not just the laws like the 21st Century Video and Accessibility Act, but it's just good for business. So when we talk about Kevin again, to kind of show you how we overcame his limitations, when you look at his setup up there, he has several switches and a wheelchair joystick. That's how he interacts with the world. Now, up to this point, they only connect into the wheelchair. They're very expensive, very proprietary. That joystick alone, $3,000 to $4,000, and each of those switches are several $100s a piece. What we did with him was to be able to use those devices. We connect them into Xogo. Xogo is our hardware platform. They bring their own devices, whatever that is, whether it's the accessible tech that you see in that setup, or any USB, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, 3.5mm jack input, smart home equipment, connects into Xogo, and from there, we connect it out to entertainment devices. And Dalton's going to show you a demo of how this looks with Rocket League on PlayStation 4.
So I'm going to give you a quick demo showing how Xogo can be used with a PlayStation. And the basic way this works is we have some wheelchair devices here, so like an accessible joystick, 2 large buttons, connected to a Xogo, which looks like this. And the Xogo is then connected to the PlayStation. The Xogo essentially acts as a protocol interconverter box. So we have wired USB output, we have some wireless radios, Wi-Fi, BLE, Zigbee, and so we can basically emulate control protocols for different devices. So the PlayStation is expecting input from a standard controller, and it just sees a standard controller, but it's the Xogo relaying input from these devices. And so now, instead of having to have a lot of manual dexterity to use a regular game controller input, I can use my wrist and use these wheelchair controls to play standard games on the PlayStation with my friends.
Yeah. And it's not just Rocket League, where you're playing soccer with a car, but people with disabilities can now play Grand Theft Auto and steal cars. And for Kevin, he wanted to play NHL 17. He hadn't played the sport he loved in 3 years, and now he's able to play by connecting on Xbox Live with his friends and using his own devices to connect. So those same switches that Dalton was using on the last demo to show the video game integration, we can also use those for cable boxes. And so right now, we're just using an off-the-shelf TiVo to be able to demo how that looks.
So right here, I've got the Xogo now switched over to a TiVo Bolt. So now using these same wheelchair joysticks and controls as before, I can now pull up the guide and scroll through and select the program I want to watch. Now the cool thing is, not only can we switch between different output devices, but we also support a huge array of different input devices. So instead of the wheelchair controls, now I'm going to show you using the Apple Magic Trackpad. And we have it switched over here, so now I can just swipe through and select channels that way.
And this works not just for devices like that, but this right here is a standard Bluetooth switch. And for people who just want to be able to use different input methods, you can go ahead and use this same switch to be able to control that guide system and turn it on and off. So this is great for people of all abilities. So past the cable box and the video game systems, we also were making sure that we could connect to new things. So one of our devices that we connect to now is everyone's favorite robot from the new Star Wars movies, BB-8.
So here I've got a little off-the-shelf BB-8 robot. And so again, using the same wheelchair controls from before, I can now control the robot. Usually this would be through an app. So one cool thing is since we have control over exactly what commands are being sent, we can actually give the user capabilities that aren't even in the app. So now the user with a disability can switch controllers on the BB-8, steer it around in a physical way, in ways that you couldn't do even with a normal interface.
Yeah. And I got to tell you, we were at CES last month, and there's no better way to get people into your booth than by having a cute little robot changing colors and rolling up to their feet. Now, on top of the configurations we have with the inputs and outputs, the apps are customizable. This is an interface we're connecting with one of you to be able to bring access to cable boxes. So people can either use the physical buttons that they have on their chair or apps like this. And we also have controls for smart home systems as well. So it's a huge focus in the industry, and it's people moving forward want to be able to connect all these varying inputs and outputs with the smart home systems. And there's not an easy-to-use central interface for that. We can do it. So for people like me, it's a great convenience, but for people with disabilities, it's a way that they can access the technology that they desperately need that's all around them. We've had a lot of successes over the past year, but the biggest problem we face in the world of accessibility is there's not a great distribution model. So after talking with some of you guys, we realized this was a great way to be able to bring this to market and help these people. We have the domain expertise. We know what the market is, we know what the problem is, and we've solved that problem by using Xogo. I was talking with a senior VP of one of the leading providers, and he told me, just in conversation, he just casually mentioned it, that on his free time, he codes for individual users with disabilities. So he's a senior vice president who is taking his time to code for individual users to connect to individual devices with individual input methods. And while that's admirable, it's not sustainable. With Xogo, we can take that support off of you and off of your engineers and bring it on to what we're doing with this device. So over the past year, we've had some good successes. We won the Louisiana Startup Prize, we graduated Mass Challenge, we won the UPMC National Innovation Contest, and just last month, we won the CES Eureka Park Challenge. We've tested with hospitals, rehab centers, nonprofits around the country. Wanted to make sure that the device works well for our users, which are your customers. And we've been talking with cable companies already to be able to bring this access to your millions of customers. We want to talk with you about how we can work together over here at Tech Stadium, because when we connect you guys, that doesn't just bring an increase to the bottom line, but it brings an increase in goodwill and an increase in public image. And there's not many things you can say that'll actually increase revenue while doing good. And that's what we love about what we do, and that's what we hope to talk to you about to see how we can work together and bring that to your companies as well. Thank you.